Hey everybody, this is Jason Roggasch. I just wanted to make a video today about the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline, as many know, please Google it if you're not familiar with the Keystone XL. It's just a massive pipeline that's going to run from Canada to the Gulf Coast of the United States, from the Canadian tar sands to the Gulf Coast of the United States. It will take oil, and it will take something called bitumen, which is, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm probably not. That you use to refine gasoline. What happens? What you're showing is this article is called "The Pipeline from Hell," which is tremendous. It's on the Daily Beast and it's written by Jack Holmes. I'm not a huge fan of the Daily Beast, but this article is excellent, and it really shows the hypocrisy and stupidity of our elected officials, and really the greed and the venal kind of just awfulness that we are surrounded in. Because of the midterm election sweep of the Senate, of Democratic senators being voted out in Republican states, this has become an issue again. Today they're supposed to be voting on it. Tuesday they're supposed to be voting on this and declaring whether the project is going to go forward or not. It's going to cost us, the taxpayer, about $7 billion. Please, I'm going to leave the links below for the article. Read the article, but I'll read some highlights here. It seems America's two major parties are finally coming together in favor of a significant legislation initiative, but should they? The Keystone XL would be an addition to the existing Keystone pipeline system. It would be built by TransCanada Corporation and would run from Alberta's tar sand fields through Montana and South Dakota to link up the system in Steel City, Nebraska. It would transport bitumen and liquefied natural gas drawn from the tar sands to refineries on the Gulf Coast, mainly in Texas. The XL addition was proposed in 2008, and the studies on the project's potential economic and environmental impact were commissioned in 2010 and 11. President Obama rejected the project's application in 2012 amid protests that it would hurt Nebraska's Sandhill region. An adjusted route through Nebraska has since been proposed, and a State Department report declared the project's environmental effect was, quote, not significant. That will come into play later. But the Obama administration announced in April 2014, that the review of the project has been extended indefinitely. Why, if the project will create a lot of jobs and have little environmental impact, does it continue to be met with opposition? To begin with, it won't actually create many jobs. According to a George Mason University study via Bloomberg, the pipeline's construction would create between 2,500 and 20,000 jobs. But more likely, it will be between 2,500 and 4,600, assuming that a huge chunk, as much as half, 50%, of steel production will be outsourced to China, Canada, and India. Moreover, when construction ends, the number of permanent jobs could fall to 20. Yes, 20. A rosier estimate from the State Department report and Newsweek puts the number of permanent jobs at 35. There are 310 million Americans and growing, and 35 permanent jobs. Do you see where this is heading? A study by Cornell's Global Labor Force Institution claims that the project may actually kill more American jobs than it creates due to pipeline spills, additional fuel costs in the Midwest, and other factors. It also claims that 85 to 90% of people hired for the line's construction will not be from the areas through which the pipeline is running, so it won't add any benefit to where the pipeline is being built. So it won't create that many jobs. After all, it's merely taking oil drilled in Canada to pre-existing refineries on the Gulf Coast. But it's a $7 billion project, and the State Department has said it will have a minimal negative effect on the environment. Plus, it could increase America's energy independence and strengthen our position in the Middle East and beyond. These are all good reasons to move ahead with the plan, but unfortunately, none of them are actually true. The pipeline is a $7 billion project, but only $3 to $4 billion of that would be headed to the United States. The rest is going to wherever the steel is getting outsourced. The claim of reduced dependence on foreign oil suppliers is also suspect. China has already invested billions in Canada's oil sands, and Chinese corporations are upping their stakes all the time. Much of the oil transported by the pipeline will be refined in Port Arthur, Texas, where the main refinery is half owned by the state-owned oil company of Saudi Arabia. What a shock, the Bush oil state, and there's Saudi Arabian oil interests and influence. What a shock, right? Thanks, James Arbath. The Keystone Project is not an American one, but a global. financed and favored by major multinational oil interests. Besides real domestic oil production, oil drilled and refined in the United States by nominally American companies has already increased 70% under the Obama administration. 70%. All of this means that the pipeline's approval would essentially be a continuation of the status quo, with a few $1 billion kicked to the U.S. economy's way. Except that the project would, in spite of the State Department's claims, have drastic effects on the environment on both local and global levels. That study, published by the State Department, was conducted by Environmental Resource Management. This is where it gets good. A firm that listed TransCanada, who wants to build the pipeline, as a client in its marketing materials a year before it began the Keystone contract. Both ERM and TransCanada told the State Department at the time, they lied to the State Department at the time, and then told they had not worked together for at least 5 years. A term of the contract meant to limit conflict of interest. Of course, any doubts about a conflict of interest evaporated when it emerged that up until the summer of 2013, a division of ERM had been working alongside TransCanada on the Alaska pipeline project, my state. These are two in a laundry list of troubling connections between the two companies. Considering that the State Department study was conducted by TransCanada's business partner, it's a little surprised that it failed to find any environmental consequences for the project. The reality is, though, far different. On a local level, pipeline leaks and spills could have a number of drastic effects. Recent leaks from similar lines have been bad, really bad. A New York Times article, 2010 leak of 840,000 gallons of bitumen into Michigan's Kalamazoo River. The cleanup has cost $1 billion so far and continues to this day. It also mentions an Arkansas leak that sent 210,000 gallons of bitumen running through the streets of small-town Mayflower and left local residents with respiratory problems, nausea, and headaches. The proposed Keystone routes would see it pass over the Ogallala Aquifer, the lifeblood of the Great Plains agriculture, where the water table is close to the surface. A major leak could poison the water supply of a large swath of the Midwest. That adds up to 1/4 of the nation's farmland. A quarter could be altered by this useless pipeline that nobody needs. The pipeline has environmental consequences on a larger scale. The pipeline would encourage accelerated extraction of Canada's tar sands, which have greenhouse gas emissions of 81% greater. I'm not going to go through this because this is all James Hansen stuff from NASA, and I'm not a real big fan of this information about how parts per million, it's the nose, we're going to destroy our environment, and that's going to how it happened. We're going to get to that 500 parts per million, which is that magic number, which is the threshold, of course, that we all know that Al Gore and everybody tells us that once we get to 500 parts per million, it's no going back. The environment is done. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I'll be honest with you. I'm starting to think that maybe we should hedge our bets because I'm staring outside my window in Anchorage, Alaska, and there's no snow. I'm looking at green fucking grass up here, so I don't know anymore. Maybe I need to readjust some of my thinking on global warming, man-made global warming. Even if that isn't an alarmist prediction, and Canada will exploit their tar sands with or without Keystone XL pipeline, there is no question that its construction will not help with controlling emissions, boosting energy dependence, or creating jobs. The only people it will benefit are TransCanada, the Canadian oil company, many part owned by Chinese and Mid-East interests, working in the tar sands, the multinational oil companies who will refine what it brings to the Gulf Coast, and a few thousand workers temporarily. So why, you might ask, are many of our leaders so eager to build it? The answer is straightforward: money and political gain. The Democrats, feeling vulnerable after the midterm rout, are eager to prove that they're pro-business, and of course the Republicans are bought and paid for by big oil anyway. It also conveniently caters to the interests of big energy. Some of the biggest campaign donors to both parties, Republicans in the House especially, have been pushing Keystone for some time and raking in donations in the process. Now, Blue Dog Democrats like Mary Landrieu are happy to hop on board. After all, some of the world's biggest energy firms like ExxonMobil have been paying for her campaign bills for quite some time. An initiative most thought would be pushed by the Republican majority in the next Congress will come to the floor in the current lame duck session. In a rather pathetic political maneuver, the Senate Democrats will try to force the president's hand before the new Republican majority gets the chance, apparently to help a single Senate runoff election that will not in any way alter the upper chambers of the political landscape. After all, the Democrats have no chance of keeping their majority even if Landrieu wins. So basically, everybody, if you want, I'll leave the links below to this. This is a great article about how we don't need this Keystone XL. It's just going to hurt our environment. It's going to create when it's all said and done, it's only going to be about $3 to $4 billion put into our economy, which is nothing, and it'll employ 35 people permanently. 35 people permanently. 35. 35 people out of a country of 310 million create 35 permanent jobs. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. Please tell your congressman and senator. I wrote mine an email today. Please do that to yours. Send them a letter, whatever, a phone call. Let them know this Keystone Pipeline does not need to be built. It's ridiculous and it's a boondoggle, and don't waste our time. Great. Have a good day.